The Siberian crane, also known as the Siberian white crane of the snow crane, is a bird of the family Gruidae, the cranes. They are distinctive among the cranes. Adults are nearly all snowy white, except for the black primary feathers that are visible in flight, and with two breeding populations in the Arctic tundra of western and eastern Russia. The eastern populations migrate during winter to China, while the western population winters in Iran and formerly in India and Nepal. Among the cranes, they make the longest distance migrations. The populations, particularly those in the western range, have declined drastically in the 20th century due to hunting along the migration routes and habitat degradation. The world population was estimated in 2010 at about 3,200 birds, mostly belonging to the eastern population, with about 95% of them wintering in the Poyang Lake Basin in China, a habitat that may be altered by the Three Gorges Dam. In western Siberia there are only around 10 of these cranes in the wild. Description: adults of both sexes have a pure white plumage except for the black primaries, alula and primary covers. The forecrone, face and side of head is bare and brick red. The bill is dark and the legs are pinkish. The iris is yellowish. Juveniles are feathered on the face and the plumage is dingy brown. There are no elongated tertial feathers as in some other crane species. During breeding season, both the male and female cranes are often seen with mud streaking the feathers. They dip the beaks in mud and smear it on the feathers. The call is very different from the trumpeting of most cranes and is a goose-like high-pitched whistling toyoyo. They typically weigh 4.9 to 8.6 kilograms and stand about 140 centimeters tall. The wingspan is 210 to 230 centimeters and length is 115 to 127 centimeters. Males are on average larger than females. There is a single record of an outsized male of this species weighing 15 kilograms. Taxonomy and Systematics. The Siberian crane was formally described by Pallas in 1773, although Ustad Mansa, a 17th-century court artist and singer of Jahangir, had illustrated a Siberian crane about 100 years earlier. The genus Megalornis was used for the cranes by Gray, and this species was included in it, while Bowdler Sharp suggested a separation from Grus and used the genus Sarcogeranus. The Siberian crane lacks the complex tracheal coils found in most other cranes but shares this feature with the wattled crane. The unison call differed from that of most cranes, and some authors suggested that the Siberian crane belonged in the genus Bucrinus along with the wattled crane. Comparisons of the DNA sequences of cytochrome B, however, suggest that the Siberian crane is basal among the Gruidae, and the wattled crane is retained as the sole species in the genus Bucrinus and placed as a sister to the anthropoids cranes. Distribution and habitat. The breeding area of the Siberian crane formerly extended between the Urals and Ob River south to the Ishim and Tobol rivers and east to the Kolyma region. The populations declined with changes in land use, the draining of wetlands for agricultural expansion and hunting on the migration routes. The breeding areas in modern times are restricted to two widely disjunct regions: the western area in the river basins of the Ob, Konda and Sossva, and to the east a much larger population in Yakutia between the Yana and the Alazaya rivers. Like most cranes, the Siberian crane inhabits shallow marshlands and wetlands and will often forage in deeper water than other cranes. They show very high site fidelity for both the wintering and breeding areas, making use of the same sites year after year. The western population winters in Iran, and some individuals formerly wintered in India south to Nagpur and east to Bihar. The eastern populations winter mainly in the Poyang Lake area in China. Behavior and ecology. Siberian cranes are widely dispersed in the breeding areas and are highly territorial. They maintain feeding territories in winter but may form small and loose flocks, and gather closer at the winter roosts. They are very diurnal, feeding almost all throughout the day. When feeding on submerged vegetation, they often immerse their heads entirely underwater. When calling, the birds stretch the neck forward. The contexts of several calls have been identified and several of these vary with sex. Individual variation is very slight and most calls have a dominant frequency of about 1.4 kHz. The unison calls, duets between paired males and female, however, are more distinctive with marked differences across pairs. The female produces a high-pitched call which is the lu. In the duetted doodle-lu call, pairs will walk around other pairs to threaten them and drive them away from the territory. In captivity, one individual was recorded to have lived for nearly 62 years while another lived for 83 years. Feeding. These cranes feed mainly on plants, although they are omnivorous. In the summer grounds they feed on a range of plants including the roots of hellebore, seeds of Empretrum nigrum, as well as small rodents, earthworms and fish. They were earlier thought to be predominantly fish-eating on the basis of the serrated edge to the bill, but later studies suggest that they take animal prey mainly when the vegetation is covered by snow. They also swallow pebbles and grit to aid in crushing food in the crop. In the wintering grounds in China, they have been noted to feed to a large extent on the submerged leaves of Vallisneria spiralis. Specimens wintering in India have been found to have mainly aquatic plants in the stomachs. They are, however, noted to pick up beetles and birds' eggs in captivity. Breeding. Siberian cranes return to the Arctic tundra around the end of April and beginning of May. The nest is usually on the edge of lake and boggy ground and is usually surrounded by water. Most eggs are laid in the first week of June when the tundra is snow-free. The usual clutch is 2 eggs, which are incubated by the female after the second egg is laid. The male stands guard nearby. The eggs hatch in about 27 to 29 days. The young birds fledge in about 80 days. Usually only a single chick survives due to aggression between young birds. The population increase per year is less than 10%, the lowest recruitment rate among cranes. The success in breeding may further be hampered by disturbance from reindeer and sometimes dogs that accompany reindeer herders. Captive breeding was achieved by the International Crane Foundation at Baraboo after numerous failed attempts. Males often killed the mates, and captive breeding was achieved by artificial insemination and the hatching of eggs by other crane species such as the sandhill, and using floodlights to simulate the longer day lengths of the Arctic summer. Migration. This species breeds in 2 disjunct regions in the Arctic tundra of Russia, the western population along the Ob Yakutia and western Siberia. It is a long-distance migrant and among the cranes, makes one of the longest migrations. The eastern population winters on the Yangtze River and Lake Poyang in China, and the western population in Fur-e-Dun Kenya in Iran. The central population, which once wintered in Keoladeo National Park, India, is extinct. Status and conservation. The status of this crane is critical and the world population is estimated to be around 3,204,000, nearly all of them belonging to the eastern breeding population. Of the 15 crane species, this is the most threatened. The western population has dwindled to 4 in 2002 and was thought to be extirpated, but one individual was seen in Iran in 2010. The wintering site at Poyang in China holds an estimated 98% of the population and is threatened by hydrological changes caused by the Three Gorges Dam and other water development projects. Historic records from India suggest a wider winter distribution in the past, including records from Gujarat, near New Delhi and even as far east as Bihar. In 1974 as many as 75 birds wintered in Bharatpur, and this declined to a single pair in 1992, and the last bird was seen in 2002. In the 19th century, larger numbers of birds were noted to visit India. They were sought after by hunters and specimen collectors. An individual that escaped from a private menagerie was shot in the Outer Hebrides in 1891. The western population may even have wintered as far west as Egypt along the Nile. Satellite telemetry was used to track the migration of a flock that wintered in Iran. They were noted to rest on the eastern end of the Volga Delta. Satellite telemetry was also used to track the migration of the eastern population in the mid-1990s, leading to the discovery of new resting areas along the species flyway in eastern Russia and China. The Siberian crane is one of the species to which the Agreement on the Conservation of African Eurasian Migratory Waterbirds applies, and is subject of the Memorandum of Understanding concerning conservation measures for the Siberian crane concluded under the Bonn Convention. Significance in human culture. For Siberian natives Jakuts and Yukatas, the white crane is a sacred bird associated with sun, spring and kind celestial spirits. Ajyy. In Yakut epics Solenko shamans and shamanists transform into white cranes.